The luxury bar Starlight Drift floated high above the glowing clouds of the planet Virelon Prime, where alien nobles, traders, and explorers came to drink under the endless view of the stars. Music drifted through the air, slow and soft, while strange glowing drinks shimmered on every table, and among them moved a young human waiter named Evan, silent and careful, carrying trays of crystal glasses filled with blue and gold light. Humans were rare here, almost forgotten by the galaxy. Most aliens thought they were weak, too emotional, too fragile to survive among powerful races. Evan had heard those whispers many times but never answered them. He simply smiled and did his work, keeping his eyes low, his tone humble. It was safer that way. That night the bar was crowded, louder than usual, because a royal group from the Velthari Empire had arrived. Tall, elegant beings with glowing violet skin and silver eyes. They looked like living art. Their laughter echoed through the chamber as they drank bottle after bottle of shimmering liquid called star wine. It was said to burn through metal but go down smooth for the Velthari. Evan stayed close, refilling their glasses. Always quiet, always polite. At the center of the group sat Princess Lyra Velthari, youngest daughter of the High Regent. She was beautiful even among her kind. Silver hair that shimmered like moonlight, a proud chin and eyes that glowed faintly when she laughed. But tonight her laughter was wild and uneven, her movements loose and unsteady. Her friends giggled and teased her, calling her too royal to hold her drink. Lyra didn't care. She was bored of palace rules, bored of being watched, so she drank more and smiled at the few humans working around, daring to look where others didn't. When Evan passed by with another tray, Lyra stopped him, her eyes hazy with star wine. She looked at him like he was a rare creature, something she'd only seen in stories. "You human," she said, her words slurred but clear enough to turn a few heads. Evan paused, lowering his gaze. "Yes, my lady, what would you like?" Lyra tilted her head, smirking. "Why so shy? Aren't humans supposed to be brave?" He said nothing, just set down the tray. The other aliens at the table laughed. "He's afraid, Lyra. He's just a weakling from Earth." Evan felt their mockery but kept calm. His training told him never to argue, never to provoke. He simply bowed. "Would you like another drink, Princess?" Lyra leaned closer, her voice playful. "You serve us so quietly, human. Tell me, do you ever get angry?" He smiled faintly. "Not while I'm working." "My lady," her friends laughed again, but Lyra didn't. Something in his tone, gentle yet strong, caught her attention. She frowned, reached out suddenly and tugged at his sleeve. "Let me see your arms," Evan froze. "My lady." "That's not—" But before he could finish, she grabbed the front of his shirt and pulled. The fabric tore with a sharp sound. Gasps filled the bar, every eye turned toward them. Evan's shirt hung open, revealing the skin of his chest, and there, glowing faintly under the lights, were strange lines, patterns like silver fire running across his chest and shoulders. They looked like living circuits, pulsing softly in rhythm with his heartbeat. For a moment no one spoke. The laughter died. The music seemed to fade away. Lyra's eyes widened, her silver pupils reflecting the faint light from his skin. Her mouth parted slightly as she whispered, That can't be." Evan quickly stepped back, trying to cover himself, his face pale. "I'm sorry, Princess," he said softly. "It's just a scar, from an old accident." But Lyra shook her head slowly, her voice trembling. "No, those aren't scars, they're marks of the Ascendant." The words spread through the bar like fire. Aliens at nearby tables whispered to each other, some in fear, some in shock. The human Ascendants were only legends now, stories told about warriors who once carried power from Earth's ancient fleet. No one had seen one for centuries, and now, one stood in front of them, serving drinks. Pretending to be ordinary, guards stepped forward, weapons half-drawn, eyes narrow with fear. Evan took a step back, his hands raised. "Please, I mean no harm." Lyra stared at him, unsure what to do. Her mind spun between fear and fascination. He looked calm, but his glowing marks began to pulse brighter, as if reacting to the tension in the air. A low hum filled the room. The lights flickered. Someone shouted, "He's activating something." Panic spread, chairs fell, bottles shattered, and the guards aimed their weapons at him. Evan turned, trying to escape through the service door, but Lyra's voice stopped him, sharp and filled with something strange. "Wait!" He looked back, their eyes met for a brief moment, and in that second Lyra saw not fear, but deep sadness, like he had carried this secret all his life before she could speak again. He disappeared into the back hallway. The door closed behind him. Leaving silence in the stunned bar, Lyra stood there, her hand still clutching a piece of his torn shirt. Her heart pounded in her chest. She looked down at the fabric. There was a faint shimmer of light still glowing on it, and for the first time in years, the proud alien princess whispered to herself, "What are you, human?" Outside the starlight drift, cold mist rolled through the glowing streets of the orbital city. Evan walked fast, his torn shirt clutched closed with one hand, his breath sharp and uneven. He knew the eyes that had stared at him inside that bar would not forget. He had been careful for years, never letting anyone see the marks beneath his skin. But one drunken alien princess had just destroyed that safety in seconds. He slipped into the narrow alleys where the light dimmed. The hum of air traffic above sounded like thunder in the puddles. His reflection flickered with the same faint light coming from his chest. He covered it quickly, whispering to himself, "Not now. Not again." He didn't remember where those marks came from. Only flashes, voices in dreams, orders shouted in the dark, and the endless silence when he woke up in the ruins of a forgotten base. Far above him, the royal guard spread through the streets. Lyra's older brother's men, Velthari enforcers, followed orders to find the human immediately. They moved in silent squads, their armor glowing faintly blue, weapons ready to them. This was not about a human waiter. It was about control, secrets buried in history that no one wanted to rise again. But Lyra wasn't among them. She had left the bar in disguise, her royal jewelry removed, her hair hidden under a hood. Her heart raced as she moved through the city's lower levels, searching for the human. She didn't understand what she had seen, only that it couldn't be random. The marks on his chest, the Ascendant pattern, were identical to the ones in the old archives. Symbols said to belong to the lost human warriors who once stood against extinction. And now one of them was alive, right here. Serving drinks like a common worker, she spotted him near the old cargo lanes. Walking alone, the air smelled of oil and rain. When she called his name, he froze, then turned sharply. His expression was calm but guarded. "You shouldn't be here, princess." Lyra stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You shouldn't either." "Human," he sighed. "Whatever you think you saw, it's nothing." She shook her head. "No, it's everything." The glow from a neon sign painted their faces blue and violet. For a moment, they just stared at each other, two beings from worlds that were never meant to meet. Lyra spoke softly. "I've seen those marks before. In the archives of my family's temple, carved into the armor of a human who saved my ancestors." Evan frowned. "That's impossible. Humans never had that kind of power." Lyra's eyes glowed faintly. "Then why does your body carry it?" He turned away, trying to leave, but two armored guards appeared from the shadows, blocking the exit. "By royal command," one of them barked. "The human is to be detained." Lyra stepped in front of them, her voice cold and commanding. "Stand down." The guards hesitated, confused. "My lady." "Your father's order." "I said stand down," she shouted, drawing a short silver blade from her belt. The guards raised their weapons in defense. Evan's marks flared suddenly, glowing brighter under his torn shirt. A pulse of blue energy rippled through the air, knocking dust from the walls. The guards staggered back, shocked. Lyra blinked. Stunned by what she saw, he hadn't even tried, yet the air obeyed him. "Run," she said quickly, grabbing his arm. They darted into the dark tunnels beneath the city as alarms began to echo above. Steam hissed from pipes, lights flickered red. Evan could hear the guards shouting orders, metal boots clanging behind them. He tried to pull away. "You shouldn't get involved." Lyra's grip only tightened. "I already am." They stopped finally inside an old service station, where flickering screens still hummed weakly. Lyra looked at him closely, her tone softer now. "You don't even know what you are, do you?" Evan shook his head. "I know I'm human. Nothing more." She touched one of the glowing lines on his chest with her fingertips. It shimmered under her touch like liquid silver. "These are not just symbols," she whispered. "They are commands, codes. They respond to energy." Evan looked down, uneasy. "Then why can't I control them?" "Maybe you can," she said quietly. "You just haven't remembered how yet." For the first time, he saw something in her eyes, not arrogance or pity, but wonder. He stepped back, confused. "Why are you helping me?" Lyra looked away, her voice trembling slightly. "Because the last man with those marks saved my world before I was born, and I think you're connected to him." Outside, thunder from the engines of patrol ships echoed through the city. They both knew the search had begun. Lyra turned to him again. If they find you, they'll kill you before you can even speak. Evan's jaw tightened. Then we don't let them. Lyra smiled faintly, a mix of fear and excitement lighting her face. Good, because from now on, human, you're under my protection. In the distance, searchlights swept the mist and the sound of drones grew closer. Evan glanced toward the noise and whispered, "Then we run again." Lyra nodded. "Yes, but this time we run together." And under the dim red glow of the tunnels, the marks on his chest pulsed brighter, almost alive, as if the ancient power inside him was waking up again, ready to remember its purpose. The tunnels beneath Virelon Prime stretched for miles, a forgotten maze of rusted pipes, cracked lights and dripping water. Long ago, they had carried power to the upper levels of the floating city, but now only echoes lived here. Evan and Lyra moved carefully through the darkness, their steps soft, their breaths heavy. Behind them, the faint hum of search drones could still be heard, hunting the scent of their escape. Lyra guided him toward an abandoned cargo chamber filled with old machinery and crates covered in dust. When they finally stopped, Evan leaned against a wall, his torn shirt still glowing faintly where the marks shone through. Lyra looked at him, her silver eyes calm yet curious. "You should rest." He shook his head. "No, they're still searching." But exhaustion weighed on him, his body trembling from the strange power that had burst out earlier. He had felt it before, once or twice in his life, but never like that. Never so strong. Lyra knelt in front of him, lighting a small blue lantern. The soft glow painted her skin with shades of violet and silver. She studied him quietly. "You don't remember anything about your past?" Evan hesitated, then whispered, "Only fragments. Voices, battles, fire, and a name I can't forget. Ascendant." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "You said it yourself." He frowned. "What do you mean?" "That word," she said. "Ascendant. It's the name written on ancient walls in my family's temple, on the weapons of the human who fought beside my ancestors centuries ago." Evan looked down at his hands. "But that can't be me. I'm just a waiter. I grew up on a salvage station. I don't even remember Earth." Lyra smiled faintly. "Sometimes legends hide in ordinary people." Her voice was gentle but full of belief. Evan wanted to argue, but part of him felt drawn to her words in the silence. The faint hum of energy from his chest grew stronger. Echoing softly in the dark, Lyra leaned closer, whispering, "Your marks. They're responding to something nearby." He looked around, confused. "To what?" The lantern flickered and the air filled with a faint vibration. Old machines around them began to light up one by one, their panels glowing with the same blue color as his skin. Evan stepped forward slowly, reaching out to touch one. When his hand met the cold metal, symbols appeared on the screen, human letters, faded but still alive. Ascendant command interface authorization recognized. Evan's pulse quickened. "It's human," he whispered. Lyra's breath caught. "You just activated a machine that hasn't worked for hundreds of years." The room hummed louder as more lights came alive, revealing ancient equipment covered in dust. A small holographic projector on a table blinked, then burst into light. A flickering image appeared, an old man in a uniform. His face lined with time, he spoke in a broken, static voice. "If you are seeing this, then one of the Ascendants has survived. Humanity's last hope lies in your hands." The image flickered and vanished, leaving silence behind. Evan stood frozen, his hands trembling. I don't understand," he said softly. "How can this be real?" Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's real because it reacted to you." She looked around, her voice full of awe. "This place, it's one of their hideouts, one of humanity's last command stations." Evan closed his eyes. Flashes of memory breaking through, ships burning in black space, soldiers shouting, and a promise whispered by a woman's voice. "Don't forget who you are." He gasped and grabbed his head as pain struck. Lyra rushed to his side. "Evan, what's happening?" I see them," he said, his voice shaking. "Humans in armor fighting something huge, ships exploding, and someone calling my name." Lyra's grip tightened on his hand. "What name?" "Captain Evan Holt," he whispered, his eyes unfocused. "That's what they called me." The moment he spoke it, the room's lights flared brighter, recognizing the name as a command key. The machines responded with a low chime, and a mechanical voice said, "Captain Evan Holt confirmed. Stasis recovery sequence incomplete." Lyra's eyes widened. "Stasis recovery?" He looked at her, shocked. I was asleep. For a long time before they could speak further. A sharp sound cut through the air, metal boots on the floor above. Lyra turned toward the noise, whispering, "They found us." Evan's heart pounded, the energy under his skin flickering like a heartbeat of light. He stood slowly, pulling on his torn shirt. "Then we leave." Lyra nodded, but hesitated for a moment, looking at him seriously. "Evan, whatever you are, whatever you were, they'll kill you to keep it buried." He met her gaze, his voice steady. "Then I'll stop hiding." The ceiling above them cracked as drones broke through. Shining harsh white beams into the dark, Evan's marks flared in response, casting back the light with blinding brilliance. Lyra raised her weapon, standing beside him. Her silver eyes fierce, the first drone descended, and before it could fire, a wave of energy burst from Evan's hand. It shattered into sparks, the air humming with unseen power. Lyra stared, her voice trembling between fear and wonder. "You're not just human. You're something more." Evan looked at his glowing hands, his voice low. "Maybe, but I'll need to remember what that means before it destroys me." And together, they vanished into the shadows once more, leaving behind the awakened machines that whispered in the dark. Ascendant command, reactivation complete. The next morning, the skies over Virelon Prime turned dark, not with clouds but with warships. Massive Velthari dreadnoughts floated in perfect formation, their hulls etched with glowing family crests and royal banners. At the heart of the fleet was the High Regent's personal command vessel, a ship so large it blocked sunlight from half the city. The broadcast towers buzzed with urgency as a single message echoed across all frequencies. "Attention, citizens. A human fugitive has been identified as a threat to interstellar stability, harboring dangerous pre-era technology. Surrender of this individual is required. Do not engage. He is to be captured alive, or neutralized if necessary." Lyra watched the transmission in silence from inside a hollowed-out docking bay deep beneath the city's surface. Evan sat beside her, his shirt patched together. Though the glowing mark still shimmered faintly through the thin fabric, he didn't react to the message. His eyes were distant, locked on the metal floor like he was listening to something far away. Lyra's fists clenched. "Neutralized," she repeated the word, disgust heavy in her voice. "They're calling you a weapon," she said. "Like you're a virus that needs to be wiped clean." Evan's voice was quiet. "Maybe I am. I don't even know what they put in me." She turned to him sharply. "You're not a thing, Evan. You're someone. And I've seen you bleed." "Not explode," he managed a small, tired smile. "That's a low bar." She smirked despite herself, but her heart was heavy. The situation had turned from strange to deadly overnight. Her father, the High Regent, had declared war on a single human, and on her for aiding him. "Your family's not going to forgive this," Evan said softly. Lyra didn't answer right away, her thoughts racing. All her life, she had trained to become a diplomat, a noble voice for her people, but no amount of education had prepared her for betrayal, especially not her own. She stood and walked to the edge of the bay, watching the patrol ships descend like birds of prey. "I don't care what they think," she said. "They wanted silence. You brought answers." Evan approached slowly. "They want to bury the past, because they're afraid of what humanity was?" "No," she said. "They're afraid of what you could become." He nodded. "They should be." Her eyes met his, surprised. But Evan's voice wasn't angry, it was calm, steady, filled with purpose. "I'm not running anymore," he continued. "If I am the last of something, I have to know what that means. And they're not going to stop me with fear." Just then, a secure comm unit inside the dock sparked to life. A holographic image of Commander Draxon. Lyra's older brother appeared in the air. He stood tall, armored in dark silver plates, his eyes sharp as a blade. "Sister," he said, cold and formal, "this is your final warning. Step away from the human and return to the flagship. The charges against you will be reduced to disobedience." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "And if I don't?" "You'll be marked as a traitor," he said without hesitation, "and treated as an enemy of the Empire." Evan stepped beside her. "He doesn't even care why you're helping me." Draxon's gaze shifted to Evan, his tone sharp. "You are a danger, human. You carry ancient weapons and unknown memories. That makes you unstable." Evan replied calmly. Then help me understand them instead of hunting me like a monster. Draxon's voice turned to ice. It's already too late for that. The galaxy will not gamble on mercy. The message ended, leaving cold silence in the air. Evan sat back down, rubbing his temples. He's right, you know. I don't even know what's in my head. What if I'm a ticking bomb? Lyra crouched in front of him, her eyes clear and steady. If you were just a weapon, you would have attacked when they chased us, she said. You saved me instead. You chose peace. That's not programming. That's choice, Evan. She stood and tapped the control panel behind them, revealing a hidden passage beneath the dock. I know a place, she said. A research lab deep in the rings of Uranus. It belonged to a human Velthari alliance long ago, before the records were erased. Evan blinked. Alliance? Lyra nodded. Yes, there were humans who fought beside us. Your marks match their command symbols. If anyone can unlock what's inside you, it'll be there. Evan stood slowly, his energy returning with purpose. If we go there, there's no turning back, he said. Lyra smiled slightly. I already turned my back on everything. For you. Just then, explosions shook the bay. Drones breached the upper deck. Searchlights cut through the smoke and sirens wailed across the walls. Lyra grabbed Evan's arm and pulled him toward the hidden exit. Looks like your answer is yes, she said. And as they vanished into the shadows once again, the ships above lit their cannons, not knowing the very thing they feared was finally waking up. The stolen shuttle rocked violently as it burst through the thin outer clouds of Virelon Prime. Alarms blared inside the cockpit, and warning lights flashed red across the control panel. Lyra gripped the flight stick tightly, her knuckles pale against the metal. Evan sat beside her in the co-pilot seat, hands shaking as he tried to silence the override lock screaming on the console. Behind them, 3 Hunter-class royal ships were in pursuit, their engines roaring like thunder across the stars. Each ship bore the sigil of the Velthari royal house, the same house Lyra once belonged to. Now she was marked as a traitor, a fugitive like the human sitting beside her. Evan looked through the rear monitor as blue energy blasts zipped past their tail. They're closing in, he shouted. I can see that. Lyra snapped, yanking the ship into a sudden dive through the rings of a nearby moon. The rings of Uranus Phi shimmered in the distance, made of ice, dust, and broken wreckage from ancient battles. If they could reach the debris field, they might be able to lose the hunters. Evan's marks began to glow brighter again, unprovoked. As if sensing danger, he looked down alarmed. It's happening again. Lyra glanced at him. What do you feel? It's like my body is listening to something, pulling power from the ship, reading the field ahead. The moment they passed into the rings, everything changed. Asteroids drifted around them like frozen giants, and the ship's sensors began to glitch. The hunter ship split formation, 2 circling wide, 1 pushing close behind. Evan closed his eyes, letting the quiet hum inside him grow louder. He raised his hand to the console, and the ship's interface blinked blue. Lyra gasped. Did you just... I didn't try to, he said. It just... responded suddenly. The ship twisted left on its own, dodging a burst of plasma by inches. More systems lit up, screens changing language from Velthari symbols to ancient human military code. Lyra couldn't believe what she saw. This shuttle's not human tech, but it's following your commands. Evan's marks flared as he whispered, It's like they recognize something in me. Another blast rocked the ship, sending them spiraling through a narrow path between 2 ice boulders. Sparks flew from the ceiling, and fire broke out in the back compartments. Lyra shouted, We can't take another hit. Evan leaned forward, touching the ship's targeting system. Again, it lit up. He reached his other hand toward the screen, focusing all his energy without warning. A pulse of energy shot from the shuttle, not from the ship's weapons, but from Evan himself. It struck the nearest hunter ship, frying its stabilizers and sending it spinning out of control. Lyra turned to him, wide-eyed. You just disabled a royal fighter. With your mind? I didn't mean to, he said, breathing hard. It just happened. But they had no time to stop. The other 2 ships began circling them like vultures, sending encrypted warnings across the comms. Surrender the human. Immediate compliance required. Evan reached for the comm, surprising Lyra. He pressed the broadcast button and said calmly, I'm not your enemy, but I won't run forever. I'll find the truth whether you help me or not. There was a long silence, then a cold reply. You were never meant to remember. Lyra swore under her breath and locked their course on the old moon base. We're close, she said. Hang on. She flipped the ship through a spin and dived through a collapsed section of the moon's surface. Behind them, one of the hunter ships clipped an asteroid and exploded in a flash of fire and steel. The final one stopped pursuit, orbiting the moon like a watching eye. Evan looked back. Why didn't it follow? Lyra narrowed her eyes. Because they're afraid of what's down there. They landed hard inside the ancient hangar, scraping across rusted metal and long-dead docking arms. Silence returned deep and thick like a tomb outside. The ruins of the hidden Alliance lab stood tall under layers of frost and dust. Strange markings glowed faintly on the doors, written in both human and Velthari. Evan's marks pulsed again, brighter this time, as if this place was calling him home. As they stepped out into the cold metal corridors, Lyra looked at him differently. He was no longer just a relic of a lost species. There was strength in him, untrained, wild, but real, and maybe something more. You okay? She asked quietly. Evan nodded. No, he said, but I think I'm getting closer to who I was. She didn't say it aloud, but she was starting to believe that who he was might change everything. The ancient corridors of the Alliance lab stretched before them like a metal graveyard. Dust floated in the air undisturbed for centuries. Faded flags hung from the high walls, half human, half Velthari, symbols of a forgotten alliance. Every step Evan took echoed. His glowing marks flickering with every breath. It felt familiar, like walking through a dream he had once lived. Beside him, Lyra walked slowly, her hand on her weapon, though not out of fear. She wasn't afraid of Evan anymore. She was afraid of what else might be waiting here, locked away with truths no one wanted spoken. This place, she whispered. It's older than anything I've seen, and still active. Faint light shimmered across the floor as they passed. The lab itself seemed to respond to Evan's presence. Doors opened without touch. Panels lit up as he moved. Lyra watched it all, stunned. I don't think this place forgot you, she said. Evan nodded. Maybe I never left. They reached a central chamber, circular and wide, with a tall control spire at its heart. The walls were lined with cryopods, cracked, shattered, and empty. Screens around the spire blinked softly with static, and a symbol appeared, a single star surrounded by human characters. Ascendant protocol active. Even stepped forward, his chest burning like fire under his skin. The marks across his body pulsed in rhythm with the glowing star on the screen. He raised a trembling hand toward it. Before Lyra could stop him, the screen flashed bright. Blinding white light filled the room, then came a voice. Deep, calm, old. Captain Evan Holt. Ascendant serial Echo 1 Prime. Status partial memory integrity. Vital signs. Stabilizing. Evan dropped to his knees, gasping as waves of images slammed into his mind. Flashes of battles on burned-out planets, ships exploding in black space, a face, a woman in a command uniform reaching for him through fire. Remember who you are, Evan. Humanity needs you, he screamed as pain filled his skull, and then all at once, silence. He fell still, breathing hard as Lyra ran to his side. Evan! Evan, are you? He opened his eyes slowly, and they glowed softly with light. I'm fine, he said, voice steadier than before. I remember now. Lyra stepped back, surprised. What do you remember? He stood, his body no longer trembling. I was part of the last human defense, an Ascendant commander. They created us to be the final shield, he said. But the war turned, the Alliance failed, and we were lost. I was placed in stasis here, hidden when everything fell apart. Lyra's voice was barely above a whisper. So you are a weapon. He turned to her, his face calm. No, I was made to be a weapon, but now I choose who I am. The AI voice spoke again. Full memory sync unavailable. Damage detected. Ascendant access restored at 63%. Warning, external threat detected. On the main screen, a red icon flashed. A ship, the final Velthari hunter cruiser, orbiting overhead. Powering weapons, Evan clenched his fists. They followed us. Lyra looked toward the hallway. We can't fight a cruiser, not without help. Evan looked at the spire, then at the ancient control panel beside it. The console sparked, responding to his presence. Symbols changed, doors hissed open, and deep inside the floor, heavy machinery rumbled to life. A chamber opened. Inside it stood a tall, black armor suit, unlike anything Lyra had ever seen. Human-made, sleek and sharp, pulsing with soft blue light, waiting for its owner. The suit stepped forward on its own and stopped in front of Evan. He hesitated, then touched it. The armor unfolded and wrapped around him, sealing itself like a second skin. The moment it connected, his marks merged with the circuitry. Light flowed across the armor, and his voice came through the speakers. Not robotic, but strong, clear, and unmistakably human. "This was never about war," Evan said. "It was about survival. And now I know what I must do." Lyra looked up at him, her heart pounding, not with fear, but awe. "You're not the same," she whispered. He looked down at her, his eyes now glowing through the visor. "I'm exactly who I was meant to be." Suddenly, the roof trembled. Plasma blasts from the cruiser above rocked the base. The AI announced, "Orbital strike imminent. Defensive systems offline. Evacuation advised." Evan stepped forward, his voice steady. "No, we fight." He extended his hand and the walls opened again, revealing a dormant drone army. Rows of sleek human battle units that had waited centuries for one command. Evan raised his armored hand and they all came online. Red optics blinking to life, Lyra stepped beside him, gripping her sword tightly. "What now?" He looked toward the sky. "Now. We show them that humanity never died." And as the base lit with power unseen for centuries, the final chapter of the Ascendant was ready to begin. Above the ruined moon of Uranus 5, the Velthari cruiser hovered like a silent beast, its cannons glowing with charged plasma. Inside the command deck, Commander Draxon stood tall, eyes locked on the display showing movement beneath the surface. "They've activated something," his officer reported. "Old tech, pre-fall human designs." Draxon's jaw tightened. "Then we end this before it spreads." Below, the underground base trembled with new energy. The army of dormant drones stood ready, surrounding Evan, who now moved within the ancient black armor of the Ascendant. Each step he took caused the ground to vibrate with faint pulses. Lyra watched him from a nearby console, heart pounding, not with fear but with awe. She had seen heroes in stories, warriors in songs, but this was something beyond that. He wasn't just human anymore. He was a spark from a forgotten time, alive again. The AI's voice echoed from above. "Power at full capacity. Drone battalion ready. Enemy cruiser locking coordinates." Evan raised his arm and the drones responded instantly, forming ranks around the command center. He turned to Lyra. "If I go out there, I can draw their fire. But I need you to reach the uplink tower." She frowned. "Why?" "Because we're not alone," he said. "There are others out there, other stasis vaults, hidden ships, listening stations. If I can reach them, they'll respond." Lyra's eyes widened. "You want to wake the old fleet?" Evan nodded slowly. It's time they knew that Earth's fire still burns. As Lyra rushed toward the uplink tower, Evan led the drones through the surface gates. The moon's crust opened like steel petals, revealing the broken battlefield above. Evan stepped onto the dusty surface beneath the looming shadow of the cruiser. The winds howled through the cracked terrain, and for a moment all was still. Then a beam of blue plasma crashed down from the cruiser, but Evan raised his arm, and the armor absorbed the blast like water into stone. He stood firm, the ground splitting beneath his feet. Behind him, the drone army marched forward, silent, unstoppable. Draxon's voice boomed from above, broadcast through the cruiser's speakers. "You were never meant to wake," he growled. "Your kind was locked away for a reason." Evan's voice returned, calm, clear and powerful. "Your empire was built on silence and fear," he said. "But I remember now, and I will not let history lie any longer." With a gesture, Evan launched himself into the air, propelled by the armor's thrusters. He soared upward, toward the belly of the cruiser. Below, the drones opened fire, coordinated through his command, cutting through enemy drop pods falling from the ship. Inside the uplink tower, Lyra reached the control core. Dust covered the panel, but Evan's earlier touch had already woken the system. She input the activation codes he remembered. Ancient ones passed from commander to commander. The console responded, "Uplink initiated. Broadcasting signal, Fleet Beacon 1, active." The signal left the moon in a brilliant beam, shooting into the stars like a flare. Across the galaxy, in the silent corners of dead space, long-hidden human satellites blinked to life. Old ships buried in asteroid belts powered on. Cryovaults in the rings of lost colonies opened with a hiss. And one by one, ships began to move, silent at first, Then with growing purpose, Evan reached the underside of the cruiser and slammed into it. Cracking the hull with a blast from his palm, he tore through layers of armor, dodging defenses that were far too slow for him. When he reached the command bridge, Draxon stood waiting, armored and grim. "You're too late," Draxon said coldly. "The galaxy already forgot you." Evan removed his helmet, revealing calm human eyes beneath the light. "Then it's time they remembered," he said. Their fight was brutal, plasma against light, blade against memory, but Draxon's strength came from fear. From loyalty to silence, Evan's strength came from something older, hope. In the end, Evan disarmed him without killing him. He stood over the defeated commander and said, "I won't become what you fear. That's your mistake. You think survival means control? But humans survived by choosing compassion, even when it hurt." He turned away and jumped from the cruiser as it powered down, the Velthari fleet falling silent. Evan landed beside Lyra at the uplink tower. Ships in the sky had already begun to appear. Human ships with glowing symbols and engines that hadn't burned in centuries. They came in groups guided by the beacon. The human fleet was returning. Lyra looked up at the sky, her eyes shimmering. "You did it," she whispered. "You woke them." Evan nodded, his voice soft. "We did it." The AI confirmed the final message. Ascendant signal recognized. Human restoration program active. Lyra stepped closer, looking at him through the blue light of the tower. "Evan Holt." "Last of the first," she whispered. He smiled gently. "No, not the last anymore." And far beyond the stars, the galaxy began to shift as humanity rose again. Not in war, but in hope.